Hello, this is Dan Ferrisi, Editor-in-Chief with Commercial Integrator. So happy to be joined today by Kevin Schroll, who is Senior Manager, GTM with LG Business Solutions. Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. No problem.
So we're going to be talking about some very topical issues and issues, on which I know you're a subject matter expert. People look to LG Business Solutions too, of course, for subject matter expertise. And let's start with kind of the return to the office and hybridization, things of that nature. What are some of the trends you're seeing from a macro perspective post-COVID as workers now return back to the office on a part-time basis? Are there specific things businesses can do to ensure their remote and hybrid staff are outfitted with proper productivity and collaboration tools when they're at home?
Yeah, so I think, over the last couple of years now, even post-pandemic, I think we've all been kind of seeing the trends, the new trends, right? A lot of companies now are giving workers the ability to work remotely or even in a hybrid situation where they're coming in 2 or 3 days a week. And there's very little staff who are now coming in full time. So I think we're all seeing the trends, and just to even quote some statistics to even back it up, and we've got some data from different outlets, but there's some interesting statistics. I'll just kind of set the table a little bit. 62% of employees say they at least occasionally work remotely. So that just shows you the vast majority are at least in a hybrid situation at a minimum, or if not fully remote. And 74% of Fortune 500 companies are looking to reduce office space. So even companies are recognizing the needs to accommodate the new way of working, right? So I think most companies, quite frankly, are pretty much adhering to the worker flexibility because, quite frankly, it's hard to recruit people when they don't give that flexibility, right? So I think they realize there's kind of a happy medium, and there's a give and take on both sides. But the fact that office space, as you see office space today, it's going to have to be redone, so to speak, right? So every company is going to have to look at their office space to see how you move away from 100% in office to a hybrid situation, because you have to now accommodate for workers coming in and out, and the fact that you may not have the entire team in different departments in the office the same day of a given week, right? So you have to figure out, how do you take advantage of the existing space you have and maybe reconfigure some spaces, whether it be out in the cubicle areas or even in the office areas or even in the small meeting rooms. So you got to figure out how best can we actually connect and tie and collaborate to those remote workers with the folks who are in the office. Some additional stats, from a worker perspective, say that 59% of workers, or 59% of workers prefer employment offering remote work. So that goes back to companies are going to have a hard time hiring people, right, if they don't provide that flexibility. 40% of workers report that they would look for another job if they couldn't work remotely, and 77% feel they're just as productive as in the office. So I think from a productivity perspective, even businesses, where they may not fully tell you this, I think they're even seeing the fact that at a minimum, productivity is the same, if not better, because most folks can be more productive as they're now managing their work-life balance. So last couple of stats I'll just put out here just to set the table. 70% of remote workers find difficulty contributing to video calls. So that's going to touch on a pain point that as we have workers desiring remote and flexible arrangements, and you have companies honoring those arrangements, the key is that there is a challenge. Workers will admit it can be more challenging to actually collaborate remotely, and vice versa. And 78% of workers feel more included when working at a physical office space. So I think the challenge for companies and IT decision makers is to understand that there's a new way of working. You're going to have a hybrid, if not full remote, and some in-staff workers in a given day or week. So you have to figure out how best to include all so that you can maintain productivity, if not enhance it, but obviously maximize your collaboration, because even workers who have a flexible work arrangement will admit it can be challenging to collaborate and get the full effects and benefits of in-face, interaction. So I think that's the challenge that companies have to consider, is what technology can help them bridge those gaps, because this way of working is probably here forever.
some really interesting cross currents, and I appreciate that context that you've given us. The fact that people are demanding flexibility, they want that flexibility, but also have concerns about meeting equity, have concerns about being heard. There are things moving in both directions, and we need to make sure that the technology that we provide and put into these environments facilitate having an optimal hybrid environment. So I appreciate you providing that context just to get us started here. So let's move in now to the IT decision makers. We want to make sure that those IT decision makers can ensure companies are equipped with technology to support a wider range of worker situations and needs, including hybrid schedules, including fully remote employees, some of those new people that you're talking about now. How can they do that?
Well, the good news is LG actually has a lot of technology that we've actually had in our portfolio and some new technology solutions that we've actually introduced since COVID. So one example is a product solution set in our large format display portfolio called the One Quick solutions. So the One Quick Works and the One Quick Flex are two examples of two displays that have built-in video conferencing capabilities. So the One Quick Works, as an example, is a 55-inch display, ideal for small huddle rooms and even medium-sized rooms where you can have, maybe 5 to 10 person gatherings. But it has the camera built in, the mic input, speakers, everything's built in, as well as a launching pad or a launcher for video conferencing platforms, whether you're using Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Cisco WebEx, has an easy launcher where you can basically set it up based on your customer's desire of what you want to launch. So it makes it an all-in-one, out-of-the-box type solutions. You're not having to go find a conference room that's already got built-in video conferencing equipment, which in most buildings is only a handful of meeting rooms. It's not, you don't see that typically in small huddle rooms or medium sizes. So back to, thinking about the space, most companies have video conferencing solutions designed into larger size conference rooms and specific identified conference rooms. But now that you have less people in the office in a given week, right? It's going to be more likely that you're going to have a handful of people and a team will just huddle into a huddle room or a smaller size meeting room and will want to do a video conference with their remote employees. So it's much easier to deploy this in small huddle rooms. It's much more affordable to do that. The other product is called the One Quick Flex, which is a 43-inch display, but it can be combined with a portable, kind of a mobile stand. So that stand, you could now put that into like maybe open cubicle environments where you've got several people in an open environment collaborating with others outside the office, or even an executive could have it in their office. And that's where they use that device to conduct their video calls because they want to use their laptop or maybe their desktop monitor as their designated workspace. They don't want to clutter that up with the video call. So they'll have the video call running on the Flex, device. Again, all-in-one video conferencing solution. And we just recently introduced a certified Zoom version. So for companies who standardize on Zoom as a technology, they can basically out of the box have the UI UX that Zoom certified hardware for that too.
Seems very, very clear that LG Business Solutions is positioned in a really effective way to capitalize on these hybrid work trends and has solutions that are really going to facilitate exactly the kind of excellent experiences that people want, whether they're working from home, whether they're working in the office part-time, splitting their time between it. The technology portfolio obviously clearly speaks to that need, so kudos for that. Let's continue on though and talk a little bit more about tools. What tools are available to facilitate meetings between in-person and remote employees? We talked a little bit about meeting equity, and I think that factors into this idea of facilitating meetings between people who are in different environments.
Yeah, I think the other thing to think about now is, and I don't think most companies have thought about this, is so it's not just making sure that you've now redesigned or reconsider your spaces in the office, right? Because now it's a hybrid, a less populated environment, but you have to now be cognizant of, okay, what do my workers have at home? So now if you've approved a hybrid flexible work arrangement or even a fully remote worker arrangement, now you have to be really mindful of, well, do they have the right technology at home, right? So again, at LG, in our IT portfolio, with whether it be our laptops, our Graham laptops, or even a lot of our desktop monitors, we have many different types of new solutions that we've launched. With the monitors, we have ergonomic designs. So whether it be monitors that have webcams fully integrated, we have specially designed ergonomic monitors that we have like a dual up where it's basically 2 stacked displays, and you can put that into a portrait or a landscape orientation. So basically giving yourself more space to, again, conduct a video call on one side, and then one screen's dedicated for your workspace. We have a hanging monitor that's a webcam, so it frees up space, so it frees up the desk space. So now it could be very simply hung on a cubicle type wall, or even in the wall at your home, where it's not taking up your desk space, because many people might have a very limited, workspace, might have an office desk, but it could be cluttered. It may not be fully ergonomic, right? So we've got some solutions that can actually pick up the desktop monitor, pick it up, free up that space, where your laptop might reside. And then you can make sure that you, from an ergonomics perspective, you've got the right height and you're looking at the monitor at the right eye level, and there's no eye strain and all those things. So, and even as you think about our laptops, we have very light laptops. All of our grams in our portfolio are anywhere from like 2 to 3 pounds is the average weight of our laptops. And that's where we get the gram, branding. It's almost like featherlight. You can barely tell it's in your backpack. So even that is something to consider, because if you have workers traveling back and forth, you want to make sure it's easy for them and they're not so encumbered, with traveling back and forth. But also when they're in their homes, they have very good solutions to work, at home as well.
Really, really informative discussion so far, Kevin. I want to continue this conversation talking about the corporate office a little bit more. It's just one of many places we might work on any given day. The transitions obviously occurred for many companies thanks to an increasing preference for laptops, which you were just referencing, because they afford so much greater flexibility than desktop computers do, both in an office environment and when they work remotely. What features should companies consider when they're purchasing laptops for their employees? Obviously, that's a consequential decision.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays it's many. It's, if you think of the fundamental features that people would look at in the past and they still will today, is going to be weight and form factor and battery life, right? So our LG grams actually have fantastic battery life. You'll get a full day in most cases, based on just regular test results. And as far as the weight, like I said, it's most of our offerings, and where I'm talking anything from a 14-inch to a 16-inch screen size, it's no more than 2 or 3 pounds, which is pretty amazing. So those are the two fundamental things. But nowadays, we take it to the next level where, we have a 2-in-1 ultra lightweight laptop. So goes back to whether it's workers at home trying to collaborate with people in the office, or you're traveling back and forth to the office more frequently. You need more flexible products like this. I have a colleague who does a 2-in-1 because most of their productivity type setup is at home. He's a remote worker, but when he comes in the office quite occasionally to collaborate with the team, he's coming in with his 2-in-1 lightweight laptop, because that's easier when he's at his desk to just undo the laptop, and he's got his display that he can write on. He can turn it into the full laptop with a keyboard, or even put an extended keyboard attached to it. But that's a much more flexible solution to travel with and also be productive while in the office. He doesn't need a full productivity suite sitting there at the office, seldomly being used, and going home and having another, duplicate that same experience at home. So that allows him to be more productive and flexible, where his main office productivity solution is probably stationed at home. But this 2-in-1 type laptop makes it affordable to go to the office and still be productive and be efficient, but not have to worry about bringing all and trying to duplicate his entire workspace at home in the office. The second one is what we call, it's the dual view. So it's basically like a 16-inch gram laptop combined with a portable monitor. So this is something where it's very similar to a 2-in-1, but it expands it to even beyond that. So you'd have 2 devices you'd be carrying with you, but even then you're probably looking at no more than 4 or 5 pounds in total, almost the same weight as old laptops back in the days, right? So, but this allows you to have now a fully extended 16-inch monitor that would come like in a folio, almost like an iPad kind of folds out in a folio, or even a 2-in-1 laptop. You can basically have it on your desk right next to your laptop plugged in. So now you can expand your desktop space. So again, you can almost duplicate your fixed workstation at home at the office while you're traveling, but not have to worry about lugging everything in, but be almost as productive as you would be at home.
I think that topic of expanding your desktop space is particularly salient right now. We've certainly seen monitors evolving to become more ergonomic, offering more special features that provide those larger digital workspaces that people desire. What should IT managers realize that today's workforce expects with their technology when they do work in the office?
Well, so I think in the office, I mean, they have to be cognizant of being flexible, obviously. I think, the one thing we haven't touched on is I think the biggest change that IT decision makers need to think about is the fact that, now that you have people who are remote, they have to think about, what kind of technology they're being outfitted with, because in the past, at most, some companies, provide a stipend, but it's up to the employee to go and buy whatever they want. I think companies need to be very careful about that. They need to think about, okay, wait a minute, I got to make sure that my worker is actually buying maybe a preset or standard list of components to make sure that there's ergonomically they have the right solution, and productivity wise and collaboration wise, I'm choosing the right type of technology to ensure they're going to be productive, right? Instead of just putting it in the hands of the employee to go to a Best Buy or some consumer outlet and just find whatever's on the shelf. So I think that's one thing they have to be cognizant of. But I think the second thing is they got to take a serious look at their office spaces and recognize that they're going to be less populated. There's going to be less people coming in on a regular basis now, and maybe partial teams, maybe half the team across all the departments in that particular building. So whether it's downsizing the physical space or it's getting smarter about those spaces and designing, different types of spaces, almost like a hoteling effect where they're allocating different places where people are coming in temporarily. And then maybe they're sharing some workspaces, almost like a hoteling kind of effect. But I think it's trying to make sure that, back to those small huddle rooms, instead of putting the big investments in the boardrooms and the larger size conference rooms where larger size groups used to congregate on a more regular basis, that's going to be more infrequent. They got to think about investing in those smaller huddle rooms where people would just pop in for a 2, 3, 4 person, conversation and pop back out. Well, now those small huddle rooms are probably more valuable space because you're going to more likely only have about 5 or 6 people in the office wanting to quickly dial into a video conference on a larger screen so you all can see the screen at the same time. So you're not just all individually on your laptops back in your cubicles to collaborate with people outside the office to enhance the productivity. So I think they need to think about the spaces and how to utilize the space they have and really kind of redo that space and get smarter about how they're investing.
Some excellent advice there, Kevin. And we've been speaking for north of 15 minutes at this point. A lot of great information you've shared. I appreciate that on behalf of Commercial Integrators audience. Just to kind of tie a bow around it, though, and finish up this dialogue, do you have any overall considerations or anything you want to reinforce about how companies should approach these hybrid office workspaces in the future that they represent?
I think it's really summarizing everything we talked about. I think, all the way from the IT decision makers and really even our partners, right? We need to be thinking about our systems integrators and the folks who are probably being called in to actually scope out, a lot of these conference rooms and the AV needs in those conference rooms of the buildings. So I think we also need to work with our systems integrators and our reseller partners to better educate them to be thinking about these changes as well, because they can actually be a proactive force with the companies to actually maybe prod them along and say, hey, you need to be considering, some of these changes with this new way of working. If the companies haven't even started thinking about it, maybe there's other challenges the companies are trying to solve. They haven't even thought about this yet, right? So I think we also need to educate our reseller and system integrator partners because they're really out in the streets. They're the ones putting bids in and speccing out a lot of these changes and a lot of the conference room needs from an AV perspective. So, we need to arm them with knowledge and information too, to be able to go to the companies with advice as to how they can better, create these collaborative and productive workspaces.
Absolutely. This has been really informative, as I say, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining us here on commercialintegrator.com and sharing your insights about the exciting future that remote work, hybrid work, the transformation of workspaces represents. Thank you again to Kevin Schroll, who is Senior Manager, GTM with LG Business Solutions, for sharing your insights with us today.
Thank you, Dan, for inviting me.
My name is Dan Ferrisi, Editor-in-Chief with Commercial Integrator. Please check back on commercialintegrator.com regularly for more informative and insightful content just like this. Have a great day.